This story has been told in the perspective of a female. For some whatever reason, I knew this girl from high school. Her name was Stacy, and she was 17 when this happened. She had Twitter for quite a few years actually. She actually been begging her parents to get Twitter ever since she was 13. Finally, at the age of 16, she was finally allowed to have Twitter. Well, when she was turning 16, she got Twitter. But she had some strict rules when it came to Twitter. No messaging people she doesn't know, only follow people that she does know, and only accept friend requests from people that she does know. At the time of this story, this took place was sometime in 2016 during the winter. It was unfortunate event that Stacy went through. Her boyfriend and her had broke up due to a verbal altercation, which resulted in them breaking up. Stacy ended up having her grades dropped. She didn't really go to class some days, and sometimes she would even skip school a couple days a week. Her parents honestly told her that she needed to get her grades straightened up, and she said she will. At the time of this story, Stacy really wanted to find a new boyfriend. Since I didn't really know her that well, I didn't really talk to her that much unless she spoke to me about something. She was a popular girl at school, but she wasn't the type of popular person to bully people. She was mostly one of the most friendliest ones, unlike the other ones that she's seen. Of course, Stacy decided to message a few guys that she saw on Twitter, random guys in fact, to see if they even can consider her to be a cool person. After waiting what seemed to be about at least a day or two, she got a message from an account stating that his name was Michael. She honestly messaged Michael back saying that she was Stacy and she went to said certain school. Now, Michael seemed pretty nice. He messaged her every day pretty much, and they talked a little bit about each other, stating what school they went to, and etc. However, though, it was a week later after the report cards came out and Stacy had somehow brought up her grades, although they weren't really the best grades, but she brought them up. At least her parents thought that they were acceptable, but at least they weren't, failing grades. Now, one day, this was the same day that Michael decided to message her and ask if she would be interested in going to his place. Now, at first, Stacy was quite hesitant, seeing that she's never been into his house and they wanted to get to know each other in person. Stacy thought that this might be okay, so she ended up messaging Michael that since she has her license, she'd drive over there. However, though, Stacy grabbed her stuff and told her parents that she was going to see this one guy at school. Now, of course, she had to lie, but it was just a little one. It wasn't going to be a big one. However, Stacy got in her car and drove over to Michael's place. It was at least a few hours later when she was at his place. She was invited inside by Michael. Michael was honestly 19 and was only 2 years older than Stacy, but Stacy didn't really mind it at all. When he asked Stacy if she wanted anything to drink, she said Pepsi. As he went to the kitchen to grab something, he said, "Oh, I forgot something upstairs. You stay here and I'll go up and get something," he said. He went upstairs but for whatever reason, Michael didn't come out. Honestly, Stacy then ended up sniffing the air, and it smelled like rotting flesh. Stacy nearly gagged and thought that maybe there might have been something stinking in the house. But then Stacy looked to see that there were trails of blood on the kitchen table going down the stairs. Stacy honestly ended up following them down the stairs to what presumably to be the basement. She made sure Michael wasn't behind her, and she did have a magnum on her, just in case if he were to try to do something to her. Her mother was in the military at the time, so she picked up that from her mother. She went down the basement, but just as soon as she got there, She ended up flipping the lights that was at the basement door. The very second she did this, she was greeted by a horrifying scene. There were a lot of blood. There were bodies of women. Most of them were in their undergarments. Some were naked, and they were lying there, dead. Stacy knew exactly where that smell was coming from when she first walked down there. She immediately ran up the stairs of the basement and went straight out the door. As soon as she went straight out the door, she ended up driving as fast as she could to get back home. When she finally got back home, she told her parents exactly what happened, knowing that she could not lie anymore. Her parents were disappointed in her for not telling them the truth. But when she showed them the Twitter of Michael, the one who invited her, they even reported to the cops. The cops arrived at Michael's house and arrested him when they found out that there were dead bodies of the women that Stacy saw. Michael was planning on killing her the next day or sometime after he met her. This was just his way to catfish people just to trick into dating him. Stacy has never used Twitter again, and she took down her Twitter due to that. The Twitter page of Michael was eventually taken down, and Stacy does not ever plan to get Twitter again. And I don't know what would have happened to Stacy if she didn't leave in the basement any minute later. This took place sometime maybe about over 2 years ago. This actually happened to my friend, which we'll call her Cynthia. Cynthia was in her early 20s when this happened, and this was around the time when she just first got Twitter. She was hesitant on getting Twitter because her sister unfortunately lost her account due to some hacker back in 2015. But of course that hacker was eventually caught. So Cynthia was a person that was her younger sister. She finally decided to get Twitter as most of her friends had pressured her to get it, which she finally did. When she was on Twitter, she followed pretty much everybody that she knows. However, there was this one guy that messaged her saying, "Do you want to meet up at the park?" What the person's name was David. David seemed to be in his 30s, which was kind of creepy, seeing a man in his 30s want to talk to someone in her early 20s. Cynthia thought that maybe it might have been a teacher that she knew, or perhaps maybe it was somebody she might have known one time, but probably just don't remember. Cynthia replied on Twitter that she would be able to go down, so she went down to this one park that was not far from her house. It was at least a 5-minute walk from her place, so she didn't have to walk too far. When Cynthia got there, she waited for about at least an hour, but there was no sign of David. Suddenly, she even sees a man wearing a hoodie and didn't look resemble to anyone she recognized. It seemed to be David, and he ended up walking away, thinking that Cynthia never showed up. What he did not realize was that Cynthia can see a handgun was sticking out of his back pocket. Cynthia immediately blocked the person and got VPNs just to make sure that this man didn't try to track her down any other way. The cops were called, but the Twitter page was taken down before Cynthia could show it. All Cynthia could show was the message and explain what she saw. Cynthia has still no idea to this day who this man was, and she clearly does not want to know. This happened to one of my friends named Angelica, and she was about 16 years old. In 2014, Angelica got Twitter mainly because her friends had suggested she get it and try it out. Angelica trusted her gut and decided to try it out, and the Twitter site seemed to be pretty interesting. However, there was this one girl who messaged her named Anne, who asked her if she was the same age, older, or younger. Now, at the time, Angelica replied that she was younger, and Anne seemed to be maybe 18. Anne and Angelica started talking. Eventually, it got to the point where Anne started saying some really messed up stuff. I don't know what it was, but let's fast forward to sometime in 2018. Now, Angelica just turned 20, and Anne ended up sending a creepy message saying, I know where you are. Angelica ended up opening up the file that was containing the photos, and they were mainly pictures of her in her school, house that is her neighborhood, and one of the most disturbing pictures Angelica seen was a picture of her sleeping in her own bedroom. So this Anne person must be taken from some guy, as the shadow didn't even resemble anything of a woman, but a man. Somebody was impersonating this person just to try to lure Angelica. Angelica eventually called the cops and reported this stalking incident, but nothing ever became of it, as the police are still out looking for this Anne guy. Fast forward to sometime at least a year later, he was officially found dead, as he took his own life by overdosing on some pills. He apparently had made accounts basically stalking people on Twitter, is because ever since his wife had died of cancer, he had been taking this mentally unstable behavior to a new level. Angelica was just glad that this man didn't even try to hurt her, because he had no idea what would he have done if she didn't report him. All of these thoughts were running through her head like a roller coaster. And still to this day, Angelica still wonders why. For some context, one of my friends, which we'll call her Sierra for obvious reasons, had Twitter. Sierra never really cared for Twitter, and she didn't really use Twitter that much, unless if it was important, or if mainly her family members wanted to talk to her. At the time of this story, Sierra was about maybe be in her early 20s. She was in college, and things seemed to be going really well. When she was in college, however, she ended up going through something that no student should ever go through. Now, at the time of this story, Sierra had appeared to be in school, basically in college. She took some courses that she wanted to do, and she took them within a few moments. Now, however, though, during the time when something like this happened, it was honestly something that Sierra never expected to come across. She was on Twitter, and she was mainly going through some stuff on Twitter, basically talking with certain people. However, though, something really freaky happened when she was in school, and she honestly wished that it didn't happen. She basically got a job at the school library, aka college library, where she ended up logging out of the computers and wiping them down so they could be used for the next day. Her main job is just to make sure everyone was on appropriate sites, make sure they were not on anything that they shouldn't be, and etc. Sierra did a pretty good job as her job, and of course, she used her phone whenever she wanted. However, something really freaky came up with one of the stuff that she sees. She ended up seeing what seemed to be a random student who she didn't recognize. She probably might have seen him once, but she obviously didn't know him. He looked to be in his mid-20s and went over to one of the computers to do his own thing. So Sierra just left him be, occasionally making sure he's not on anything he's not supposed to. So Sierra just ignored him mainly, because for some reason, he gave her some creepy vibes that she honestly had no idea why, but for whatever reason, he did. Now, Sierra waited for a while until one of the days that she was away, she basically ended up deciding to go to the library just to print out some few files. As she went to print out a few files with documents for her classes, she saw the same guy again. So she decided to come back when he's off and see if he was doing anything illegal or something suspicious. Now, at the time of this story, Sierra was kind of the type of person that basically just has eyes at the back of her head, sort of speaks in a sense. But it wasn't until when the guy finally got off, so she ended up going over to the computer to see that there was nothing on the computer. The only thing that was on the computer, though, was just a Twitter page. She looked to see that it was the same guy, so she decided to have a look at it. She ended up getting the information from this site, seeing that this person went to school, but of course, it didn't really state on where he lived or where he was from. But when she looked at the Twitter page, she honestly could see something horrible. There were some photos and images of other college girls. There were obviously been taken in locker rooms and etc. Sierra had no idea why this person was doing this, but for whatever reason, he actually was doing what he did. And at the time, Sierra honestly had no idea what this man was doing or who he was. She reported him to the authorities and even the school about it, but they couldn't really find out really much about him. However, they found at least a flash drive that contained all of that images, and basically he uploaded all of them to Twitter. Basically what happened was he downloaded all the photos from everywhere he went on his phone, sent them and put them on his USB, but he also sent them to Twitter. The Twitter account was eventually taken down by the police, and this man was arrested, and Sierra has not seen him since.